And a very good evening to you all. Good afternoon to some of you, and good night to those of you who are joining us from Europe, the United Kingdom, France, wherever you are in Europe or further afield. Good night to you, and good evening to most of you, those of you who are joining us from inside of Guyana and the wider Caribbean, North America. Good evening to you and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101. Our guest tonight is Dr. Henry Jeffrey, Future Notes, Dr. Henry Jeffrey. And we, of course, are going to center our discussion around the strike. The teacher strike entered its second day today, and I had a chance to see some of the live coverage of the demonstrations, and it seems as if the strikers picked up some more speed today. Yesterday, of course, the union estimated that close to 60% of the teachers stayed away from work. It was quite heartening in Essequibo and Berbice to see very good turnout or in support of the strike. I think even the government side acknowledged, although they said in schools where teachers union members work, there was low turnout of the teachers. However, it seems as though today there might have been more teachers who stayed away, and the demonstrations on the streets. Linden, I saw some shots from Linden today, Georgetown, of course, New Amsterdam area, Anna Regina. There seems to have been quite a lot of energy there. Welcome to Politics 101. There are lots of issues around that strike. The very right of workers to strike. We hear the government using a language that I have not heard for a long time. I know going back when I was a boy in the 1970s, I would hear the PNC government of that time talking about political strikes. You know, and it's always amused me. I remember Walter Rodney dealing with it. So all strikes are political. I suppose when they say political, they mean whether the strikes were in pursuit of partisan ends. And that, for me, is also laughable because, my God, I lived through the 135-day strike of 1977 by Gaou. And if there is a partisan union, openly partisan union, it was Gaou. Gaou is affiliated to the PPP, openly so. A member of Gaou sits in the National Assembly as a PPP parliamentarian. So when I hear the PPP talk about political strike, I want to know what are they talking about. As I said, I assume they're talking about partisan strike. Well, I mean, which union can be more partisan than Gaou? In fact, all of them are partisans, you know. I remember the Guyana Labor Union. The president of the Guyana Labor Union used to be the leader of the PNC. The president general of Gaou used to be the leader of the PPP, you know. We have had this. I mean, my own party, the University of Guyana, it used to be Staff Association, then it becomes University of Guyana Workers Union. Clive Thomas was at one time the president. Father Malcolm Rodriguez, I think Josh Ramsamy, they were all WPA leaders and members. It's nothing new to have members of political parties heading unions. So what is this thing that the strike is political because Coretta MacDonald sits as a member of parliament for the APNU/coalition? It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. But that is the justification they're using. As I said, I grew up hearing about political strikes, and it has always struck me as being nonsensical. What seems new to me is we are now hearing that the strike is unlawful, illegal, and that strikes me. Now, workers exercising their right to strike under the Constitution, their strikes are considered illegal. And coming from the PPP, long before there were political parties, there were trade unions in our Caribbean. 1919, the first trade union in the English-speaking Caribbean, our own British Guyana Labor Union led by Critchlow. And those trade unions were really the organizations that took the fight against colonialism. Certainly in the 20th century, we all know about the 1930s, as they call them, the 1930s riots. They were really trade union demonstrations stretching from Jamaica in the north right down to Guyana in the south. And those demonstrations were pivotal towards the decolonization, the late decolonization movement. It was out of the 1930s demonstrations that the British sent a commission of inquiry into the Caribbean. Out of that came self-government, and then eventually independence. The political parties, for the most part, came out of the trade unions. The trade unions had political arms. And a lot of the political parties really came out of those so-called political arms of the trade unions. And so to hear a PPP government really saying to workers that your industrial action is illegal. It's illegal because what they said, 21, 23 of the grievances that were presented were taken care of, and so it is illegal. What have we come to? In 1953 October, when the British invaded its own colony, the then British Guyana, because the first self-government were enacting policies that were inimical to the Cold War interests of Britain. And the straw that broke the camel's back was when they passed a bill in Parliament. They passed a bill in Parliament giving workers the right, trade unions, the right to represent workers under a PPP government, albeit it was the original PPP that included Burnham and Jagan and Carter and Sidney King and Westmus and Janet and James Phillips Gay and Jesse Burnham. The whole set of them were there in that original PPP. But that PPP government was ousted because it sought to give trade unions the right to represent workers. Now we see a PPP government really going against workers. I mean, threatening the workers that they will not pay them if they go on strike. They will not pay them. And then today, telling the union that they will stop deducting union fees. That's union busting. Those are attempts to weaken the union. And this is under a PPP government. Sisters and brothers, we are in serious times. We are living in serious times. Henry Jeffrey is going to be on, and he has been beating that drum of the PPP's engagement in what he calls the politics of domination. And we know where the politics of domination lead. those politics lead to dictatorship. It doesn't go in any other direction. In any other direction. Of course, this weekend, Henry Jeffrey's column dealt with the strike, and sought to situate the strike in the larger context of democracy, because that is what it's about. The right to strike is a democratic right. It's a right that our foreparents fought for and died for. And when workers strike, they're striking for the most part for a livable wage, the right to a livable wage, a living wage. And the right to a living wage is tantamount to the right to life. And here we have a government that is saying to workers, your strike is illegal. And we see the police getting involved and the police talking about people threatening people. Man, look, let's be real. Whenever there is a strike, the unions have a right to try to get as many workers as possible to go on strike. Where this thing about intimidating people to go on strike comes from. Sisters and brothers, good evening and welcome to Politics 101. It's a Tuesday night. It's a Tuesday night. Day 2 of the strike. Day 2 of the strike. The teacher strike. The teacher strike has to be near and dear to the hearts of all of us. We come from the type of society that upward mobility, social mobility, resulted for the most part from educational opportunities. And our teachers were pivotal and continue to be pivotal to the socialization and the formation of who we become. And so many of us can talk about teachers. So many of us are teachers. And we know that teachers all over the world are not paid well when one thinks about the kind of work that they do in molding a society, molding a nation. But in Guyana, I mean, it's shameful. Teachers are earning $100,000. By the time you take out tax, they take home next to nothing. Trained teachers, just over $100,000. That's $500 US. A lot of the chaps who were telling the teachers that the government can't afford it, they're gone to Palm Court and blow $500 US out in a round. And you just unveiled the budget for $1.14 trillion. And you are saying to 54,000 public servants, to 14,000 teachers, that you can't afford to pay them a living wage? When the PPP was in opposition, they said they'll raise the teacher's salary by 50%. And they're criticizing Coretta McDonald because she was part of the strike against the coalition. And they don't realize that what they're doing is making her look good. Because she was and is a supporter of the opposition, yet in her capacity as a trade union leader, she represented the workers and went on strike. They struck for 9 days against the coalition government. That puts her in good stead for now striking against this government. It shows her independence. They're making her look good, but they're trying to make her look bad. Good evening to all of you and welcome to Politics 101, day 2 of the teacher strike. Let's bring in Dr. Jeffrey right away. Dr. Henry Jeffrey, you are perhaps one of the best placed persons to deal with this issue of a teacher strike. You are a teacher, were a teacher. You were a minister of education at one point. You dealt with this question of the teachers' wages. Dr. Reverend Father Malcolm Rodriguez, you appointed him. He dealt with this matter. So this is a matter that you know very, very, very well. Let me start off by asking you, is the teacher's case a just case?
Well, thank you very much. And let me say thanks for your listeners to be having us again in their homes. Obviously, it's a just case. The Constitution of Guyana is quite clear. People can have, workers can have the union of their choice. And by the fact that they said that, it means that if you're a government, you got to deal with those unions. And then we have, remember, you started just now by speaking to the trade union recognition bill. And now we have a trade union recognition bill. Let's say that there are processes for unions to be recognized. The teachers' union is recognized as a union to deal with teachers. Any government that takes 2 years to finish a discourse with the teachers, what they say, justice delayed is justice denied. And that is, I don't know how they can talk about something being illegal. This is, it's 2-3 years the teachers going at this. And then, as I said in my article, you only got to read the press to know that they have been obfuscating all over the place. They don't want the thing. Now, all they can mean is that when they say, oh, it's illegal, is that they have not followed the procedures. But how can they follow the procedures if you are not negotiating in good faith? The teachers went at the end of the day, and because that is the end product, they said, let's have arbitration. What is government says? Conciliation isn't over. And they're doing the conciliation. But if you can't, after arbitration is strike, anytime you decide you can't have arbitration, it's what we'll call the peaceful means of getting a dispute over. You know, I got a feeling that even the Minister of Labor don't know what he's doing. The Ministry of Labor and the Minister of Labor, you spoke just now to the teacher strike with Rodriguez, but the teacher strike with Rodriguez was the same time as the public service strike. But according to the public service agreement, collective agreement, the two parties, the employer and the employee, had to agree on the chairman. That is, the government and the trade union, PSU and that lot, had to agree. But in the teacher's place, the minister had the right. That was Minister of Labor then. The minister had the right to determine the chairman and determine the way process, the way forward. When it came to the crunch, I said there must be arbitration. And I appointed Father Rodriguez, and I went to the government and said, I have a man, because the government, this is the funny part of the Minister of Labor's work. When it comes to employer relationship, the minister of labor is not politician anymore. He's a go-between. It's a funny thing. I read that up, so I knew at the time that, look, as employer, employee, I am just a go-between in this thing here. No, I want, when Armstrong come to the, to do the, you can ask him because he's there. He came when, remember, during the public service strike was the same time he came and forced, one of the first people come was me. I was Minister of Labor, and he said, what's your position on this? I said, Aubrey, I don't have a position. The government has a position. In this game here, I'm positionless. The government has a position. This is the government position on the matter, and this is the union's position on the matter. You go arbitrate. It's your job. You are the arbitrator. The Minister of Labor, when it comes to labor dispute, any labor dispute, it's no different between private sector employer and employees. When they call, you don't say, I am a, for this employer and not for this. You just say, look, we are doing our work objectively at this point, and that's what we did. So effectively, as I said, justice delayed, and it has been 2 years, is justice denied. The Constitution of Guyana states quite clearly that the unions can exist, and by definition, they must have a right to represent their members. The government has reneged on that process over 2 years. Every time you pick up the paper, this, that, preventing. The union finally said, let me go to arbitration. They did not. What you want them to do? Go and start burning down schools? Because that's where you're leading to. That is what it ends. If you end the peaceful and sort of way of doing this, where you think it leads to? War. When arbitration finishes and we can't deal with it, it's war. And the war for trade union is strike. Any trade union that cannot strike is not trade union at all.
Yeah.
You have to be. And I said, congratulations to the teachers union. I end my article by saying, don't matter how this turn out, they had a right to take a stand. Had a right to take a stand against an autocratic regime. An autocratic regime that is recognized worldwide as autocratic. So that's my position on this talk.
Yeah. Henry, I'd like you to expand, because you located the right to strike into in a larger global context, in terms of how the world defines democracy these days, and you situate the right to strike as being part of the democratic ethos. Talk to that.
But of course, look, even not the other day, you see Biden talking to the trade unions. Look and say that, because today there is not a time since, I would say, the early 1970s, that we have seen such inequalities in the world. Not a time. No. And all over, everybody now coming. In my article, I showed that the British since 2015 was saying, look, 3/4 of them saying, oh, this is terrible. Trade unions are necessary. And it's been shown in America, Canada, anywhere you have liberal democracy. But the PVPs, they come from those, they are more or less the Russian, all them, where you never had proper independent trade union. China, these days don't have. The party control the trade unions. And that is what happens in all the so-called communist countries. Every single one of them. The party apparatchik control the trade unions. But in liberal democracies, the trade unions are independent. They fight for what the workers want and determined, and if we can't agree, well, then we go to arbitration. Who gives the government of Guyana the unilateral right to determine how much salary trade union got? The Constitution said they don't have that right. I don't even bother with all the talk about how much they got and how much who got. I said, listen, at the end of the day, the Constitution said these people got trade unions. You have to sit down and talk to these trade unions. And if you can't agree, you go to arbitration. I don't want to hear if they get enough or they didn't get enough and all of that. They might have gotten enough and whatsoever. In this case, they did not have enough. But what I'm saying to you, that you have no right to believe that you independent. Constitution is clear. People have a right to trade unions, and trade unions have a right to bargain for their people, and you have a right to sit down in that bargaining table. But to that end, until you do that, you are breaking the laws of Ghana in a fundamental, undemocratic way. And that is my position. I don't even care if you say, oh, you see, that's what they go around and says. They got so much percent. I don't care. The unions don't think that is sufficient. The union don't believe so. And therefore, you better convince the union that it's so, or go to arbitrator who must take your side or say what is what. It's the same nonsense that been going on with Armstrong. Same thing was being said. We can't pay. Yet Armstrong pay nearly 70% increase. 70% over 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what? Yes, maybe the IMF went and raised the inflation rate a bit so that everybody feels the burden outside, because of the inflation. But the point is, what it was done. The government don't have any unilateral right to determine what public servants earn. None. The Constitution said that. None. They don't have a unilateral right. And that's what they've been doing and doing and doing. Of course, no talk about the other side either. But I mean, that's beside the point. They have no right. You have trade unions. Trade unions have a right to negotiate. If you can't negotiate, you go to arbitration and you live by the arbitration.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here tonight, weighing in on the strike as it enters its second day. The teachers strike. The teachers have 2 planks. One, they're arguing for collective bargaining, and then, of course, wages. Dr. Jeffrey, this talk about political strike, as I pointed out, I've been hearing it since I was a boy under the PNC government, and I thought it's something that had gone away, and here they're talking about, what is a political strike?
A political strike is a dog whistle said they want to get rid of the PPP or PNC government. Hey, and you watch them, they want to get rid of the PPP government. That is all they say. That is what they mean. That is the fact of what they mean by political strike. Whichever side tell you, who is a political. They want to get rid of weed. That is what they mean. That is it. This is not a difficult thing. It has nothing to do with anybody's politics. That's what they said. Look, she is PNC government. And now this is a PNC government to shake the board and get rid of weed. That is it. But the PNC can't get rid of them because the PNC is in control of the final thing. In teachers' case, the minister has the right to choose the chairman. And they're contesting, the employer and employee have the right to choose the member of the arbitration panel. So why aren't you going to arbitration? And I tell you something. I when you told me that is what you wanted to do, I went and I found since 2003 there was a kind of agreement. Remember the PPP at that time and really get started in their dominance role as it just maturing. And the agreement says that the rules of engagement, this we talk about PSU now, because remember they were there. PSU and the PSM should, first one, the rules of engagement that's in their collective agreement should be adhered to. This was what the government was saying. Secondly, the PSU PSM agreement for the avoidance and settlement of to adhere to, but salaries and allowances must be based upon an acceptable formula, but rest by various things. Oh, you remember what Jagan said that formula should be? Jagan said that formula showed the rate of inflation plus the rate of growth. You remember?
Yeah.
All right, they're hardly giving you the rate of inflation because they are giving you the rate of inflation at the end of the year for the very year the inflation took place. So if at the beginning of the year you would have got $5, if they give you the end of the year, it can't buy $5 worth of things that you would have bought at the beginning of the year. Of course, your government come and do the same thing. But I mean, you got to give people the $5. You can buy 5 loaves of bread at the beginning. By the end of the year, the $5 ain't buying no 5 loaves of bread. It's buying 4, 3.5. So, but Jagan always says that it must be based on the rate of inflation. Now, my dear friend, if you had really done that and today was 4%, you know what is the G and what the rate of inflation is and what is the growth in the economy, not GDP. The rate of inflation would mean that maybe you got to pay people no 65% increase. I'm not saying that is all what should be paid. I am saying the government of Ghana has no moral, legal right to sit down and believe, because the Constitution says people have unions to defend them. And to bring up all these points I'm bringing up here, it's for the arbitrators and the country to throw them out and say, stupidness Jeffrey talking. Might well be stupidness. But the point is, you have a process, not for the president to sit down somewhere and then when he feel like he come and start walk around black people village and throw a little thing to us at the little people, giving them things and trying to win them over. That is unacceptable in the worst possible way. You must have processes. You must have a form. It said there that the Chelly Jagan used to always say, you know, at time I was shocked. I don't know if it was 94, Chelly Jagan had 80% increase. I thought, what? Based on the own formula, that's what this thing turned out to be. He had about 18% or something like that increase. And therefore, you know, when you were speaking just now with the PPP and PPP, don't talk about it like that, because the PPP then is not the PPP now. It's like the PNC then. We tend to do that and say the PPP. It's a far different PPP from PNC. That's PNC you get in that border PNC by any stretch. The PPP there is not Jagan PPP by any stretch.
Which takes me, Dr. Jeffrey, to this question of withholding monies from workers who go on strike. They did it to the nurses. The court just ruled that they should not have done it, and they're now doing it to the teachers.
Yeah, but it's all illegal. What are you going to wait to all the people things for? Why? As I said, they're a union. They have a right to strike. They have a right to strike if you're prevaricating about talking to them. I mean, they can't win nothing like that in the court.
And they said they were advised by the chief labor officer.
They were what?
advised
Yeah.
by the chief labor officer.
A chief labor officer or the one? What they were advised by that chief labor officer is that you can do that to frighten them. Yeah, you might say do that to frighten them, but you ain't got no right. Indeed, the people have done absolutely nothing. It's 3 years your way to finish something. It's not justice delayed, justice denied. What, you know, I mean, it's they can say that is in the arena or the of the teachers to have discussions. It's there. They got to start, call them to discussion and all of that. It's not in the purview of the union of the unions, and they have not done so. If they were really concerned about the interests of the children of Guyana, they would have been firstly in about 4 or 5 months get this thing out of the way. If you can't agree with the teachers, go to arbitration. Go and let the arbitrator say. Remember, I said Rodriguez come up and he says 10% for some levels of teachers and 12% for the other. They didn't want to go, so they mess around till Armstrong is 72%. Neither made any So don't make the PPP tell people nonsense. Nothing is illegal. The Constitution gives you a right to trade union. While the Constitution gives you a right to get trade union, it means that the government got to deal with the trade union. But you know, it raises the other issue. We always say the Constitution gives you the right, the law gives you the right. And we got governments that ain't doing nothing, and we can't do anything about it. Now, you tell me why. Why is it? And isn't that the more fundamental question facing this entire country? If you only got to read the letters in the press, all of them, end by, most of them, I can't say, end by saying, by most of me, 90%, which is all, but ends by saying, we hope that the government can listen. We hope that this person can listen. And for 60 years, nobody are listening. So,
Jeffrey, let's get to the politics of this. The relationship between public servants and the PPP party when they're in government has not been a good relationship.
No, of course.
Going back to the 1960s, coming
50s,
right through. And when you look at what this government is doing in relation to this strike, the way in which it is engaged in that kind of war propaganda, the way in which it is threatening the workers, we're going to take away your money, we're not going to give you the money, we're not going to deduct union dues anymore. Is this a collision course that this government is courting between itself and the workers?
No, which workers? You see, there's your story. They're losing most of the constituency vote for doing that nonsense. You know that. They're not going to lose most of their constituency vote for doing. That's why they're doing it. That's the question I was asking you. Why you think they don't do what anybody? There is no united public opinion to hold governments accountable. None.
So this is part of its onslaught on the opposition. Then
yes, they do what. There's no public opinion to hold the government accountable in the sense that they control almost 50% of the votes. The opposition control 50%. There's not much movement there. There's not much movement. That's what happening all the time. 1 seat majority, 2 seats. And anytime you can win anything by 1 seat, you ain't got no right to be where they are messing around with all the wealth of any country. Particularly because they're an ethnic party too. It's Indian votes. that's got them there, vastly so. Why you think they're in all African village trying to get up? But you're not paying the mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers, but you're taking the money that you were supposed to pay them, running there, trying to say that you're building roads and giving people employment. So, in real terms, the villages might be worse off for what they are for those roads than if they didn't pay the people on the roads.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're not putting more money in there. Look what they did with capital expense. I show you capital expenditure increase.
Yes.
900%. Recurrent expenditure increase 200%. And as I said before, where is all the capital work? Where capital works going? After 30 years, the PPP can still think it's legitimate to say, but Black people can't do business. They think that is still legitimate. But Black people ain't got the capital, they don't do it. When half the time they spend trying to make they can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
America and all these places try every way. If you live in a country, a multi-ethnic country, particularly one such as us, we are essentially bi-communal, it's your job as a government to show over years how many Amerindians are business people. You can't show 90% of the people are Indians, the business people, and say, Amerindians are not business people. Similarly, you got to put up programs and plans to say, I am responsible for the country as a whole, not for Indians alone or for Black people alone. I must see that Amerindians are 10% of this population, that they move quite quietly to get 10% of the contracts coming from government. That is what I got to do. And that's one of the foundation stone of any sort of government that want to run a multi-ethnic society. But where's the PPP? They use it as excuse for not giving you contracts.
An excuse for not giving contracts. And speaking about that, let me just remind you all of our fundraising effort on behalf of IPADG. Our fundraising effort on behalf of IPADG. I have a couple people to thank who made donations yesterday to IPADG. I would like to thank Jem. For her generous donation to IPADG. We would also like to thank, let's see here, Vanilla for her generous contribution, and Lyndon for his generous contribution. Remember, the government has withheld the subvention to IPADG. IPADG, however, continues to do its work. It really needs our help to keep those doors open for it to continue to do the work. They have to pay bills, they have to pay staff, and we are appealing on their behalf. And some of you have come through. We are encouraging the rest of you to please donate to IPADG. The Cash App, PayPal, Zelle information is there. The PayPal and Zelle information, it's the same. Please make your donation to IPADG. They really need your help. We have turned over what we have raised thus far, and they've been able to pay some bills this week. And we hope that you will contribute to IPADG. Dr. Jeffrey, you made an important point in your column this weekend. And you said that you are talking about a comparison with Singapore and Guyana, and the fact that some people in government are saying we should follow the Singapore route. And you made the point that had we been like Singapore, with a super majority ethnic group, we would have been in far more trouble than we are today. And that perhaps one of the reasons that we have not gone over the cliff is because of that
Science.
the balance between the two ethnic group, what you call it, bicommunal nature of our society. Expand on that a little bit more.
Well, you see, the PPP has been pushing a lot of, here's what the PPP wants to do. They want to tell you that material things are all that matter. And so they've been always pushing. They're trying to say, building plenty roads and road that is all that matter. Don't worry about democracy. We're going to take care of democracy. We are giving you all these things. We are giving you, not giving yourself. You're not an independent agent. It's we sit down in a little cabal and giving you all these nice things. So you're going to a nice house, you're going to and give you some nice money. You are not independent agent. You stop being a person, a human being that can determine its own future. No, but we can sit down in a little cabal and give you all these things. I know you're going to build this and build that. Good. So now, effectively, that is their dream situation. And so you have some people now come up and start about Singapore. But Singapore is a dominant ethnic situation. It left Malaysia and came over in an ethnic quarrel. It was a big ethnic quarrel. So they are, like us, they have been in ethnic quarrel. When they came over, when they became independent and a republic, the Chinese that are 74% of the person continue to support the Chinese government that has been in there forever. No governmental change has taken place in Singapore since 1950. Every time people come and say, Guyana was at the same level of Singapore, I say, if only they know. Guyana, yes, when they came over, used to have the same GDP per capita Singapore. But Guyana, the turmoil in Guyana could not exist in Singapore because they got a dominant state situation. And that is essentially, so if that alarm, if let me say black people are 74% of the population in Guyana, you don't have a problem. Because the Indians might have been 14 and the other one's 10 or something. Well, where's the point of their quarreling? Because we can always go and vote and so on. And it depends on the liberal nature of our government, what they get and what they got. Imagine that in Singapore, a university people say, calling the government to do an ethnic disparity analysis, like Australia. Imagine Australia. You see, and Britain, he said, do an ethnic. When the people tell me they don't discriminate, I say, really? Well, do the ethnic disparity analysis, and let me see. Get people together and do a inclusive ethnic disparity analysis, and we see if black people are not worse off since about 2000 to today. If it's not, I'm willing to say, but if they're not, but you can't move on from that stage on it until you find out if that is the case, and then put in place policies to deal with that. The PPP don't want you to find out if that is the case, and so you certainly don't want to put policies in place to deal with it. That is where you are. So that's where we are today with that. And if we weren't 40%, the existential threat coming you about 40% of the population, we would have been suffocated under the majority. That Jega and Tati they would have had all the time. Promise to the communists, Soviet Union, that you're going to use that to carry Guyana into the Soviet bloc. That is a fact.
That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact. Dr. Henry Jeffrey here tonight. Good evening to all of you. All of you are joining us in your numbers tonight. This is the week of the first week of the strike call by the teachers union. After a long time begging, crying, pleading, the union has decided to call out its workers on strike. And in a time when people weren't too sure whether there was the momentum, whether the teachers would heed the call, whether the fear-mongering by the PPP would have an effect, it seems as though a majority of the teachers have heeded the call of their union. Dr. Jeffrey, based on what you're seeing, are you surprised at the level of participation in the strike by teachers?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, a bit. Yes. Of course, we gotta wait till these numbers settle down. I learned a long time in Guyana. Yeah. Wait till the numbers settle down. But the numbers of they are now shows that the teachers union has a case. And for that, you got to subtract the fear factor the PPP send to its own constituents. As I said in the article, the PPP got a monitoring, political monitoring of their communities. The thing they just try to do, come in African village, you can't go in their villages easy.
No, never.
Right. Yeah, they got a policing thing and monitoring arrangement in a village that would cause problems for you if you starting in all manner of ways. As I said, that is their communist heritage. I come from their communist heritage, in the sense that, communist Cuba and all them, every community got its little cell that got look how to police people, what they're doing and all that. And if 20 people were supposed to vote for it from a street and only 18 voted, you only get 18 votes in the street, people say, they must be the two, and trouble for the two. And that kind of thing don't happen in African villages. I can't remember it ever happening nowhere. It's always even the border.
Even on the border. I was just about to say that. I mean, the fact that Rodney and the WPA could have flourished during the height of the Burnham ascendancy shows that the different nature of the communities.
It's a different nature of political arrangement. They were essentially, remember, if you go back and read the Communist the Communist International strictures, you can see they told them how to organize the community and how to know people and all that. So that's what they did, and they're still doing it. It is not anything new. So,
what do you think accounts for the response that the union got, the good response for now, the good response that the union got from the teachers?
The best, the very thing they keep pressing. Oh, we rich. Well, when you when you start telling ordinary people they're rich, and you splashing and splurging, and they can hardly go and buy some cucumber on the road. What do you think will happen? They're gonna see it. Of course, you can go, as I said, in Indian communities, you can watch at family income because of all the capital works that's flowing down there. But they're going to be quite a thing. What I'm talking about, Indian community, they ain't got no capital works. Maybe that's why you're seeing the upsurge in Essequibo. They ain't got no capital works. They're just like you.
Yeah. I was surprised by what I saw in Essequibo.
Yes, because they're poor and you rich, everybody rich, everybody act. I don't even bother with Excel. I know you're not gonna deal with. I've always said, when you do deal equitable with the wealth you got now, then I'm gonna start joining you to talk about Excel. You got sufficient now to deal equitably with. I ain't want nothing but Excel anymore. You got enough now to deal. If you're not dealing equitably, why I care if you get more to further suppress me? You must first of all deal equitable with the $10 you get, then I can fight for you to get 100. Because I know I can benefit from that. But don't tell me number Exxon. Exxon do what they like because, and Exxon will, because the divided politics in this country ain't good. You got to get a united action to deal with people like Exxon, or they got to buy out one side or another. So I am, so, you know, I mean, at first, environmental thing and so on, I used to deal with it with Exxon and all that. But I said, this is not really relevant. They got 15 million now and they're not giving anybody. They're not being equitable. Why should I want them to get more?
Which brings us to the point of this new law that gives them access to the Natural Resource Fund.
Natural Resource Fund. Yeah, but you see, yes. Well, this, as I told you, the government is not accountable to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And when a government is not accountable, they do what they like. They feel like doing it, they do it. Story done. You can't do nothing about it. What can you do? You can talk about it. You can walk. Your only thing you can do is put on your fighting boots and do what the teachers doing.
What the teachers are doing. What the teachers are doing.
Yes. You got to determine that the time has come for this confounded nonsense to stop. That's now the quote you used last week from...
Yes.
From Brindy Bed. What was it?
From Guyana.
Yes, Guyana. Yes. You have got to put on your fighting boots and do that. Or else you're not doing nothing. You can
put on your fighting boots and do that. This confounded nonsense has to stop. Please support the teachers. Please support the teachers. Parents, please support the teachers. If the teachers are able to win, then all of us win. Because they will show us the blueprint how to win. Jeffrey, you've been on both sides of this thing. As it stands now, where is this headed? Where is this headed?
The question for me as we go for, it's not where, well, that's a good question because it's not where this is heading to. Because in terms of a solution, if all you're going to go to the next election is with the same arrangements you have, and some other party might win by 1%, it doesn't solve Guyana problem. Even if they happen to go down there and win by 1% or one vote, it don't solve no problem. You can't left all them Indians out there and say that you are making decisions, because most of them, the vast majority, will vote for the PPP. So effectively, you got all the country out there. Therefore, where it's heading is because it seems like somebody wrapped the PPP on their head or somewhere, well, not on the head, and say you gotta get constitutional reform before election. And so they come out, and the president said, it's Venezuela that didn't make him. He had 15 years, 3 years to do it. And he said, the Venezuela stuff, they don't want to do it. So somebody tell him, hey, let's get constitutional reform going here. We know that this thing got to change. So get up together and change this thing. And that is where I hope it is going. It is going, but as I said, don't drop the ball again in my article last week. The last time when it went there, the PNC dropped the ball. They got put, and it's that not I too, because how you grow up on everything, in that sort of majoritarian thing, and Desmond Passad and all sort of confusion. So, but don't drop the ball. The majoritarian system got to take a walk. Ethnic groups, according to the UN, have a right to vote for who they want. If an ethnic group want to vote for PPP, if Indians want to vote for PPP, that is their business. If Black people want to vote for PNC, it's their business. You got to set a society that can take their interests into play. You have got to form a society that allows all of them to be part of the important decision-making processes in the country. Not for you to try to make Indians like blacks or blacks like Indians. I don't think anybody dislike anybody in the first place is the politician. But the point is, if that is it, black people want to vote black people, leave them alone. If Indians want to vote for Indians, leave them alone. Don't try to set up the system so nobody is discriminated again and things are equitably distributed. That's your job, not to try to harass ethnic people anywhere, England, anywhere. That's the rules. No, people, United Nations, ethnic people, minorities, whatsoever, have a right to their own political organization.
Have a right to their own political organization, Dr. Henry Jeffrey. And before we go, please make your contribution to ITPADG. ITPADG is appealing to us to help them to keep their doors open. They've not been given that subvention that is voted on by the National Assembly, and they need our help. And some of us have come through in the last couple of days. The rest of you, please, no matter how small, please make a donation to ITPADG. The information there is up on the screen. The information there is up on the screen. Jeffrey, the teachers have shown the way. From what you know of the trade union environment, is the public service union likely to follow suit?
Well, I've been listening a bit to all this. The public service union got more difficulties in terms of a whole lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers union, it's a third of the teachers union's members are not strongly, more than that, I was saying nearly about 50. If you talk about people that are strongly holding on to the PPP, particularly at the Amerindian and in areas and so on, it's about nearly 50% people now holding on strongly to the PPP. I am not certain you can say the same thing of the public service. And then the public service union has put itself in all sorts of jeopardy because of lots of things that happen in the classroom. The teachers union has we strike against the PNC. So don't come and tell me nothing.
There you go.
The public service union can't say that. What they did, they talk a lot about, please talk to me. And they said no, and then they go and join the public service commission. They put members of the commission. Yeah. So they got their own different sort of story. But I heard Lincoln say something the other day. He says, all of these things, all of the PPP union had a political backing. It is not these unions alone, Muscat. And when you start saying it. The PNC must recognize that its constituency that is largely Afro-Guyanese are under pressure and come out publicly and support these people. They must make it quite clear that, look, if you as an Indian, Amerindian, or whosoever you are, can't support us because we have a righteous struggle here. If you can't support us, it better be doing part company. Mandela had to say that. The ANC had to say that. The ANC was, yes, sir, it's no point if I got mollycoddle you for you to support me if you believe in what I am doing. And if you think I'm doing something wrong, tell me. And let's see if we can change that. But don't tell me. I got mollycoddle any ethnic group to support a cause as righteous as right now as the African in Guyana.
And what a way to end tonight. What a way to end tonight. Not often we hear it as raw as that. Not often we hear it as clearly put as that. Only on Politics 101 and only from people like Dr. Henry Jeffrey. I hope PNC members are listening. I hope PNC supporters are listening and take the message to their party. I happen to agree 100% with Jeffrey. I think insofar as something is missing, I think that is perhaps the biggest thing that's missing. Henry Jeffrey, always a pleasure, my brother.
Same here.
I'm looking forward to your column this weekend, and for you to be back here in 2 weeks' time. 2 weeks fly, especially by the time you come back. The first phase of the strike would be over. Yeah.
Oh yes.
We'll see
Thanks
what
to you. Thanks very much, and to your audience for having us.
And thank you very much, Dr. Henry Jeffrey, tonight. Please go and make your contribution to it, Prodigy. Please do. They need you. They need that contribution from you. They need that contribution for you. Please, on behalf of Politics 101. Tomorrow night, we come back. It's a week of action. We're calling for boots on the ground. We got plenty boots on the ground right now. Last week, I'm going to be on Kidaki program in the morning. Last week, I had to holler on some of his supporters who talking about this and that, but that leave the workers alone. Don't wash them out on them. Nothing comes easy. And when it comes, it will surprise us. Even for somebody like me, is always optimistic about people and workers and poor people. I am surprised at the level of turnout and the enthusiasm that's shown by the teachers. It shows that when you stand up against fear, when we, in our numbers, throw our support behind those who are under siege, what a difference it can make. And that's why I always say, stop cussing workers, stop cussing Black people, stop cussing poor people about what they're not doing and how they're taking blows and this and that and thing. Human beings are not robots. Struggle is not something that we sit in a chair and we design it. Oh no, it happens in the way it's happening. And it's better always to be surprised than to feel that you expect 1,000 boots on the ground and you get 20. It's better to expect 100 and you get 1,000. And that's what happens. It's sweet. It's sweet. Not only that the workers are striking, but there's a level of militancy that we are seeing that can only work in the favor of justice. Stop cussing people that they're taking blows and we don't know what they're doing and the Guyanese got to get up. Guyanese are always getting up. Workers are always getting up. And as I said last week on Kidaki Show, when you see Black people get ignorant, and I'm talking about ignorant in the bad way, ignorant in a militant way, some of the very people calling for boots on the ground going to run for cover. Because we are human beings. And because we've been down this road before. And we know the playbook. 2 man in more. 2 man in more. 2 man in more. 2 man in more. Let not your heart be troubled. Let not your heart be troubled. Neither what? Neither what? Neither what?